We got the first chapter out of the way. We had the kind of like more introductory setup in the previous chapter out of the way. And now we are getting into the plot and getting into what I would consider the start of the adventure of the story, start of the main story of how Tonkatchi and Renga are going to go about just becoming carpenters. And I do really look forward to seeing just the world building on top of everything else. I have been rereading some Toriko. I've been like super hyped up on the vibes of this mangaka with his with Build King coming out with this new series, and it just makes me more excited after going back and rereading some stuff, just because I was going through some parts I really liked about how he does, how it just does like fights, and how he just kind of like is super creative when it comes to like monsters and environments, and how over the top he is. Like this chapter already gave a really good example of a Shima Bakura just over the top, really kind of like crazy feat, and yet at the same time the visual behind it just so good. Like the whole beginning, like you have Nana talking to them, like Tonkatchi's just happy that they're gonna leave, and they're kind of just going over it, and they're like, listen, like it's not gonna be that easy. Somewhat like the big typhoon that they have all around it. Essentially Hammer Island is like right in the center of this, this eye of the storm. And you have this part where like they're saying how it's like, oh yeah, we remember at one point because the master showed it, so you talk about Shovel, and he stacked up rocks all the way to like above the cloud layer. And like I know like it like storm clouds, like tropical storm clouds, because I would assume this is tropical considering it's like way off on some island, and what I would consider, from what we've seen for the most part, good weather, at least for the island. But it's not, I think it ends at like 6 miles up or something. So this guy stacked these rocks up for miles and miles and miles, and gave this really cool like look to like just general bird's eye view of it. And I thought that was really, really well done, just from showing what it looks like above this chaotic cloud layer, while doing it in such a ridiculous shonen way that I thought was really cool. I liked it a lot. I like this cool almost power level like flex of this guy who can apparently just do this with no problem because he's apparently such a good builder. But during they're like talking about how it's a typhoon that's big enough to alter the topography of an entire continent. So it's, if you haven't checked out this manga before, he likes to do crazy over the top big feats. Like just like the description of that is absurd. Like this is just a one specific area of their world, one zone, and this storm is enough to like alter continents if it was over it. But luckily for them, it's just over, I would assume, for the most part, empty landmass, empty just ocean. And the chapter actually really misdirected me like in a strong way, because while they were getting ready to get out, like there's just this a really large piece of debris that comes up, like there's just this big rock, and you have Nana smashing it because he doesn't go inside the house because the house doesn't really like him after what happened. But he's like smashing the one, like this really big ass boulder that's probably like, what I would, just looking at it, like 3-4 times as big as their whole like little house island with their little mimic house. What was it, a house beast or whatever? But during that like commotion, door opens and Renka's headband just blows out of the front door, and he goes after it, and you have Tonkatchi going after him, and I guess it would have some really important value to him because clearly it does to Tonkatchi as well. And it turns out that their master Shovel, he ended up he gave those to them. He took his own headband, broke it, and he cut it in half and then gave it to them, which makes sense of why it'd be really valuable to them. It has to do, probably with their whole drive, the person that, they look up to as their master in this profession. And I thought that was just really nice. And one thing that I really like that Shima Bakuro did, that I wish that we would get more of when it comes to mangaka, is there's a part when they're out in the storm, because Tonkatchi goes to save his brother, and he uses hammer, goes, just rockets himself over to go grab him, and while he's like holding on to his brother, and he's just kind of like free falling. He sees a house, and they have a short flashback of Shovel describing like why he came over here. It's like, oh, he came to make this house for somebody inside of this storm, and it's kind of like it was done more in a way to give them a like invigorating just surge in their body, because they're like, oh, you can build a house out here, then that you can build a house relatively anywhere, like I guess in the idea of like what a carpenter can do, but also in the mindset of somebody's able to live in a crazy storm like this because of the work of the carpenters. And that's what they both really are, heavy leaning when it comes to like their character personalities. And I know some people could say like, oh, the carpentry aspect of the series is very strange, but you got to think of it from like the perspective of essentially the scene is, to them, they're creating places where people can be happy and feel safe and peaceful, and they're only able to achieve that with these houses in this world and this crazy like giant monsters and absurd weather and whatnot. So you have to be able to create constructs that can withstand all of these natural forces. And so like it's really cool to think on the concept of the series itself, but also in what like the main character's kind of going off on already. But like I was saying, I thought that they were going to end up going to this guy's house and talking to him, but now there doesn't seem to be that way. But I'm guessing that they're going to come back at some point and see him. And that's one of the things I really, really wish that like newer mangaka would do. And one of the things I really like about this kind of very old school 90s style that like the Think Build King has is to have a early thing in the series to come back to, like something that's just like, hey, this exists, well, but I can't do this yet, but I'll think about it. It'd be like in a video game if you were playing a part of the game and like in the first level you found something that it's like, oh, you can't access this until you get a certain item or ability to get past a puzzle. And then when you get the item, you're like, oh yeah, that thing way in the back, like from the very beginning, time to go try and do that. And that's the thing I really like about just this chapter on just that small note, because I feel like they're gonna definitely come back and visit this guy because he's probably important to the plot. Like you even see a little bit of a silhouette of the dude. He's got like horns. But I just really like when they have things like that in series, not just games, but in any series where it has something very, doesn't have to be huge, but something at the start that you can kind of refer back to way later when things are either crazier or more progressed. And then it's again a really cool thing of when you're way later and then you realize something from the beginning and you're able to backtrack and find out, oh, this is where this started at. This is where this originated at, and obviously now like where things are going. But at the end of it, I really liked them getting out of the storm. I thought it was really cool of them just visually breaking the boundary of like this typhoon. I thought that was really neat. And then at the end, we see this massive like city, like they're saying they're at the continent now, and you have these really cool buildings. And I really like just the layout of this land, like the stairway, how the stairway is like built into this hillside perfectly. But then you also have these weird kind of like road archways, like grooves in the land with like these castles and whatnot. It just looks visually really, really cool. And one of the things I really like about this manga, because he's very creative when it comes to designs, and I can't wait to see more of what Build King holds and what like we're just going to kind of get in general. I think the constructs are going to be really, really cool. I mentioned before, I kind of wish I was an architect, but I don't think I have the talent for it, just because I always thought like buildings, like designing buildings and stuff was really cool. So like having that in this, I think just has a lot of extra like small points, but I think the concept in Build King is really good. Like I said, I think the 90s vibe, a lot of people really enjoy, just because it gets you back in early like nostalgic place just right off the bat. But also it has a very, it has a very kind of simple tone to a degree while doing it in a very complex world. And again, I mean complex world and the idea of like, you have to be really immersed to understand how this world is set up like this. Because otherwise it's just going to be like, oh, you're not going to really, you're going to look at it and be like, oh, it's weird that everything is just kind of like focused on carpentry. But you have to get in the mindset of these characters and why this world is like this. and why it's become such a staple thing in their kind of like general existence. It's kind of like I compared it to like if you watched Yu-Gi-Oh, if you just jumped into like the 5th series or something, you'd be like, man, this card game dictates like almost everything. It's like it's so ingrained into essentially their everyday lives, versus if you watch it from the very beginning and then got to like that far in, because you'll have seen it start, you'll have understood the history of like, okay, even if it's crazy from, you know, the real world standpoint, you have to look at it from like the context of where it's coming from and what makes it, you know, like that. And I really like that about like really weird series. I've always really enjoyed when you have to really get immersed in a series to kind of really understand the severity when it comes to stuff like that. And again, the best example I have is it is Yu-Gi-Oh, just because it's such a ridiculous world when you think about it, and I'm a big fan. But like, I have to admit, like when it comes down to like, oh yeah, these card games depict most of like how these guys, you know, the outcomes of their lives a lot of the time in the world. And I've always really had fun with seeing like how much effort creators put in to have the viewers get immersed, like their efforts to get you kind of really stuck in this world. But yeah, I really like this. Again, it's 3 chapters in. I've had a lot of fun with it. I can't wait to see more. I really want to see some more characters. The one thing, again, I think Shimabukuro really has to do that I legitimately think was a negative for Toriko is he needs to have a good female lead. Just because I feel like the kind of the duality of having, you know, the female and male lead, whether the male lead is the main character or the female is the main character, but having that duality between them at a very basic concept of literally just having one male and one female in the main cast at least, it's such a successful kind of component that I think that the series would really benefit off of. Plus, I think it's a very easy thing to get some people into a series if there's like a character they can just visually really like from the start. So we'll see about that. And plus, one thing is, if it's as long as he does like the character justice, knowing Shimabukuro, that any character that would join the main cast would end up getting to be really powerful, getting a lot of action, getting a lot of cool scenes, and I think he could do that very successfully, like very well into this whole run. So other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, but from the like button, subscribe button, and to check out my other videos. Other than that, I appreciate everyone's already subscribed. Thank you all for listening. Bye.